time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Jeanette Anderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Maturepreneur Podcast. I am your hostess with the mostest, Jeanette Anderson, and I'm here today with the really fascinating and interesting Frank King. I've met Frank a few places along the way at Podfest and Speakers Playhouse and a few other places like that. And he's just an interesting man in terms of the work he does, how he thinks, and how he approaches the world. So that's why you need to listen so that you can think like him and do interesting things like him. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you. Yes, do interesting things as I do.
Yes, exactly. So welcome, everybody. Put your feet up, grab a glass of water, a cup of tea, whatever you want, or a glass of wine. And we're going to dive right in. I'll give you just a brief intro to Frank, and then we're going to find out the juicy tidbits behind the scenes that most people wouldn't know. So Frank blends his experience as a 12-time TEDx talker on mental health, a clean, clever stand-up comedian, and as a warrior in his own lifelong battle with depression and thoughts of suicide for content-packed and eminently listenable keynote presentations and workshops. So you can make a difference, you can save a life, and often you can do it by starting a conversation. So Frank is a world-class speaker, and yes, you heard it right, 12-time, in fact, record holding, right? No one's done more than you.
Nope.
TEDx speaker. So we're going to talk about that and mental health and bodybuilding and all sorts of things today. So welcome, Frank.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the nice introduction.
Tell me a little bit about you that people wouldn't guess, maybe even your friends don't know. What's something about you that people would never guess by reading your bio or your website or your book or anything like that? What's something?
The bodybuilding, probably not many people. I guess if we're connected on Facebook, you may have seen pictures, but otherwise, most people go, "What? Bodybuilding? Yeah. Wait, you're 67." Correct.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So most people wouldn't guess that you're a competitive bodybuilder, right?
Yes, in part because when I have my clothes on, you really can't tell. I've threatened to write a book called Undress for Success, Look Good Naked.
Yes.
Because you can't tell, when I'm wearing my clothes that I do that. I always wanted to do it starting in my teens back in the day. And I'm too slightly built to compete really. And back then there were no true natural contests. It was all, they didn't test you for steroids or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so the contests I do are what they call true natural. They polygraph you beforehand, they urine test you afterwards if you win your category.
Wow.
So it makes, it sort of levels the playing field. So the people in the contest aren't as big as the ones you'd see in a straight up bodybuilding contest, but still in amazing shape. And I've so far finished last each time, but my goal is not to finish last.
Exactly. So let's dive in right there. So what prompted you to decide to do this? You wanted to do it since a teen, but you started when?
I figured that if I waited till I was 60 to begin, that most everybody else would have given up. And pretty much that's the case. Not a lot of competition. Okay. And I was already in the gym for my cardio because I've had 2 aortic valve replacements, double bypass, heart attack, 3 stents. So I thought I'm in the gym anyway, if I just adjust my weights a bit. And then I went on the keto diet January 1st, 2018. And that summer I began intermittent fasting. Okay. So lifting, fasting, keto diet is my program. And it's part of my self-care plan for mental illness. Mm-hmm. I believe you should have a self-care plan, whether you're neurodiverse or not. Right. And I believe a self-care plan should have one non-negotiable. And my non-negotiable is I work out every day. I do my best to work out every day, regardless of what else I do that day.
That's amazing. Okay, there's so many things in there that I want to kind of follow up on. Okay, so first of all, if you didn't hear that, it was just freaking brilliant. Wait till the competition weeds down and then go and do it. So
Yeah,
starting
that's right.
bodybuilding at 60 because there's less competition, that just sounds smart to me.
Yeah.
Um, and so what did it take for you to actually decide to go into competitions? Because like I was on a weight loss documentary series or reality show, and if anybody had told me I would be seen in spandex bite shorts and a sports bra outside, never mind on international television, I would have laughed my ass off. But lo
Sure.
and behold, there I was in all my glory with all my rolls hanging out. So what prompted you to decide to do that?
Well, again, I wanted to do it forever,
Yep.
and it is by the way terrifying. I I have opened up for Randy Travis, country singer, one summer, two shows, 5,000 people per show in an amphitheater, never broke a sweat.
Yeah.
On stage, wearing essentially bikini panties, dancing around for a minute and flexing in front of 200 people is just terrifying,
Yes.
nightmarish. That I don't know. A lot of men, myself included, have dreams where you're out in public and you're in your underwear, and that's it for some strange reason. So it truly is nightmarish. Yeah, it was always on my bucket list, and when I waited till I was 60, like the last contest, there
Mm-hmm.
were four of us over 60.
Mm-hmm.
It's an international federation of bodybuilding,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the largest group over 60 in the entire world at that moment. There are so few of us.
All
So
right. Well, that's good. That means you only have to take out three competitors to get to the top of the pack. That's pretty.
that's right. And they're all older than I am, so maybe
You hang
I'll,
in long enough.
I'll win by default.
Yes, winning through attrition.
Yeah.
Okay, so but in terms of getting the courage to do that, because yes, you work out and yes, that's part of your thing, but making that leap to that terrifying stage, how did you think about that to create the courage to do that? Because that's the tricky part is getting the courage to step into the fear.
Yes. Well, I just set my goal not to embarrass myself. I
Okay.
had to work out hard enough and diet hard enough that when I took my clothes off and stood there in my little shorts,
Yeah.
that it wouldn't be like, why is he here? So
Okay.
I set the bar kind of low, and I just didn't want to be embarrassed.
Okay.
I didn't care about winning or placing. I just wanted to make sure that nobody wondered, why is he here?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So set achievable, attainable goals is what I hear that as.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
then be able to step into and say yes to yourself. So what is it about it that motivates you or drives you? Is it that it keeps you active? Is it the prospect of winning? Like what is the thing that kind of makes you want to go through that kind of public terror?
Well, it gives me a goal in the gym rather than just lifting weights to
Mm,
say get in better shape. We're lifting weights and dieting toward a date certain.
yes.
And there are a lot of guys in the gym, a lot far bigger than I,
Hmm.
better shape than I. But it takes a whole different level of testicular fortitude
Hmm.
to take that to the stage and dance around. I've heard guys say I'm a bodybuilder, and I'm thinking, have you ever competed? Then maybe you're not really a bodybuilder until you
Yes.
compete.
Yes.
Um, it's I believe everybody should have an avocation or a hobby
Hmm.
that is unlike what they do for a living as much as possible. And I speak for a living. In bodybuilding and working out, I don't have to utter a word
Yes.
ever.
And yeah.
So that is like the antithesis of speaking. Um,
Yeah.
Besides the fact that when I speak, I'm wearing clothes. When I bodybuild, I'm not. But but yeah, it's just it's and when you have mental illness, consistency, I believe, is important.
Hmm.
And no matter where I'm in the world, so let's say I'm on a cruise ship somewhere,
Hmm.
a 25-pound dumbbell weighs 25 pounds. The
Hmm.
machines in the gym may have a different label, a brand on them, but they're identical to the machines. They're all the same. So when you walk into a gym, it's very consistent.
Hmm.
And it's one of the things I like about cruise work is the gym is steps away.
Hmm.
Kind of hard to, well, I don't feel like walking 30 feet.
Yeah. Yep. It's a whole floor away. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh, yes. And they got unlimited protein on the ship, and they feed practically around the clock.
Yeah.
So it's and I don't have to do dishes, I don't have to prepare the food. I just show up and hold my plate out and
Yeah, we'll talk about your speaking in a minute too, but I also want to talk about the mental health side of it. So for you, the consistency is one of the biggest reasons for doing it. It gives you a goal, a tangible, motivating goal to support your consistent workouts and behaviors.
yes, and as they say in improv, yes, and this morning I was wearing a tank top and I began the contest in July. So I began to practice. There are certain poses that are, it's like the Olympics. There's mandatories.
Yeah.
And then in the afternoon, when you do your routine, that's really just for the audience, for the entertainment value.
Yeah.
But in the morning, you have to do, there's 4, 5, 6 standard poses that the judges will say, okay, now side chest,
Yeah.
okay, shoulders. So I was practicing those particular, and it's harder than it looks to hold that pose, muscles flex for 60 seconds.
Mm,
I had no idea how hard that was.
yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't look that hard because the guys make it look easy. But yeah, so I began today practicing for the moment when the judges say, do this, do that. Um,
Cool. I like that. Okay, so let's switch topics and go to something that's been a lifelong passion, avocation, and challenge for you, and that's mental health. So you're
yeah.
known as the mental health comedian. So tell us where all of that started.
Well, in the womb, um, depression and suicide run in my family. It's called generational depression and suicide. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old. I screamed for days.
Oh my goodness.
And in 2010, after filing Chapter 7 bankruptcy, I learned what the barrel of my gun tasted like. Spoiler alert, I did not pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the inspiration to speak on suicide prevention because I'd always wanted to make a living and a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Have content, teach people something besides just 45 minutes of endorphins and a comedy show.
Mm-hmm.
I just had no idea what I had to teach anybody. And there's a great book by Judy Carter called The Message of You, Turning Your Life into a Money-Making Speaking Career. The Message of You. She's a friend. She said, Frank, read the book. You'll figure it out. So I went into it thinking I got nothing. And then I realized, given my mental illnesses, near suicide, more nuts in my family than in a squirrel turd, that I could speak on suicide prevention
Mm-hmm.
as a workplace health and safety priority. Second hurdle was I've been doing comedy for 2.5 decades. Who's going to take me seriously?
Mm-hmm.
So landed my first TEDx. It was on suicide prevention called Start the Conversation. And people realized, wow, he can do something serious with humor, of course, not jokes, but funny personal anecdotes.
Mm-hmm.
In my first TEDx talk, my first funny was I said, I went on TED.com to see how other people handle suicide as a topic. I figured there'd be 2, 3 dozen talks. There were only 3 talks. And I
Mm-hmm.
said to the audience, then it hit me, duh. If you're really good at suicide, you're probably not going to be recording a TEDx talk. And they realized this is a little different. This is
Mm-hmm. We're going to come at this from a different angle.
yes.
Yeah. So how long did it take you until your mess became your message, until your challenges became the thing that you now talk about? So
It
when did
was
you start dealing with that as a professional speaker?
Yes, what happened was in 2008, 9, 10, the bottom dropped out of the speaking business. And when it began to come back, that's when Meeting Planner Speakers Bureau said, Frank, look, we love you. We can't pay you $5,000 anymore just to be funny. You got to teach them something. That was the motivation. I'd
Mm-hmm.
always wanted to do it. I just never could figure out what I had to talk about.
Right.
So in 2012, I added a suicide prevention speech to my repertoire.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2017, late 2017, I'm working on a cruise ship
Mm-hmm.
and I'm thinking about 2 very successful businesses here in town. Guys belong to the chamber. One gentleman owns three radio stations,
Mm-hmm.
and another one owns an auto body shop, completely different businesses. However, they're both super successful. And I thought to myself, now what do they have in common? And it hit me. They do one thing and they do it better than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd been given that advice a number of times, starting in 1995. I heard this term, riches are in the niches in 95, but
Yeah.
I didn't know where my niche was.
Mm-hmm.
And then the wealthy speaker coach, Jane Atkinson, has a phrase, pick a lane.
Mm-hmm.
That was December 2017. So January 1st, 2018, I thought, okay, I'm a suicide prevention speaker, period, full stop. Now, I'm still happy to do the other keynotes that I have written. I can do comedy, I can auctioneer, I can MC, but I don't market anything but the mental health comedian, suicide prevention speaking.
Yeah. And
And
and you're right, that does help narrow down, because if you're all things to all people, then of course you're nothing special to anyone. And so what happened to your career as a result of that niching?
and I think any entrepreneur, anybody in business should pick a lane. I don't believe in side hustles. I get pitched all the time on LinkedIn for, passive income. You could be a representative, blah, blah, blah. I think any minute I spend on a side hustle or passive income is a minute I'm not working in in my lane.
Mm-hmm.
And once I locked into being a suicide prevention speaker, it seemed like things began to fall into place. I met people in the industry. I met a woman who taught a class, the first class I took, and I've taken two from her since then on suicide prevention. So it just seemed like the universe went, well, where you been?
Mm-hmm.
We've been waiting.
Yeah. As
And
soon as you put your stick in the sand and say, this is who I am and what I stand for, now people can refer you. Now they know who you are and what you're about. It just makes it clearer and simpler for everyone.
yes, and it it allowed me to focus. And then what I tell entrepreneurs is this: pick a lane,
Yeah.
whatever it is you're going to do, hopefully it's your passion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you need to figure out who your ideal clients are.
Mm-hmm.
Who has the problem you want to solve and has the money to pay you to help them. And so I selected a half dozen of the top 10 at-risk occupations for suicide in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're like the body shop guy, his niche is, we live in Eugene, Oregon, which is very green. And all of the materials he uses are bio-friendly.
Okay.
Now, they cost more.
Mm-hmm.
It takes longer for the paint to dry.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're environmentally sensitive into sustainability and so forth, that's very appealing.
Mm-hmm.
So he does really good work and it's environmentally friendly.
Mm-hmm.
That's his niche. The radio station guy, there was a country station here in town
Mm-hmm.
and another country station opened up. And they're both using the same format,
Mm.
new country. And he saw that and a license came available for another station. Doesn't happen very often, but a company will go out of business. They'll return the license to the federal government and they put it up for sale.
Mm-hmm.
I thought why he couldn't understand why the second country station went with new country when there's already a new country.
Yeah.
So he realized that there was no classic country station.
Mm-hmm.
So he went classic country.
Yeah.
Did extremely well because he wasn't competing with either one of the new country.
Yes.
So again, the riches are in the niches. He figured out where he should be, where he should position himself, and he became classic country. There's no other classic country in the valley.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
that's his unique selling proposition for that particular one.
Right. And a lot of people get all antsy about focus and narrowing down because they're polymaths or they're multi-potentialites or all the various different words now for you have a lot of interests. I call them scanners versus delvers. Different orientation, different way of looking at the world, different contribution. Scanners are innovators and thought leaders and creators, and delvers are the implementation people, and both have value, both are important, but they do things differently. So for scanners in particular, telling them to pick one thing just makes their butt go tight. And so it doesn't mean that you have to just do one thing. So you have a very varied career. So tell us a little bit about, like, a month in the life of Frank. So, what are some of the various things that you do? Because even though you niche down, you have
Yep.
a lot of variety. So, tell us about your career. What do you do?
Well, I started with speaking.
Yeah,
Then I began to pile up the TEDx talks.
yeah,
And because of that, people came to me and said, friends, other speakers, acquaintances, help me get a TEDx. So I did.
yeah,
And one day, a friend of mine who's a business coach called me
yeah.
and she said, I get the feeling you're teaching TEDx for free. Now
Hmm.
I'm quoting her,
Yeah,
that shit's got to stop.
yeah.
End quote.
I know exactly who you're talking about. And yes, she would say that.
Yeah. So I had a website built for TEDx coaching and began TEDx coaching. I mean, is a separate revenue stream,
Mhm.
but it's still within my wheelhouse. I mean, it's there's nobody else with as many as I have. Occasionally somebody will go, what qualifies you to teach TEDx? Well, I have 12. Like a dozen? Yeah, I think a dozen is 12. Uh, and then Kimberly Crow
Yeah.
said to me, Frank, look, TEDx is good, but I would wager that make money speaking is better in terms of more people would want to make money speaking first and then get a TEDx. So we experimented. I
Yes.
did a thing, a Speakers Playhouse Live, where you get a bunch of speakers together, like 50,
Yeah.
and you teach them something. And I
Mhm.
taught them the 6 things you can do to kill your chances of landing a TEDx. So they got 45 minutes of that.
Yep.
And then you make an offer. And I offered my TEDx coaching program. And I picked up $20,000 that weekend. So Kimberly goes, now this time you're going to do the make money speaking. You're going to teach them about speaking for 45 minutes. Then
Mhm.
you're going to pitch your make money speaking. And I made $40,000. So I'm not a math major, but I do believe 40 is bigger than 20. So I'd been pitching TEDx on LinkedIn. That was my one thing. I believe on LinkedIn, you should be pitching one thing.
Yes.
And I shifted it immediately to make money speaking. So if you go to my LinkedIn profile, all it screams is make money speaking. You'll see a couple of my TEDx talks in the featured section,
Yeah.
but nothing up here will say anything about TEDx or mental health or
Yeah.
that. So yeah, that's when I made the shift to make money speaking. And then wait for it, there's more. About a month and a half ago, I got contacted by somebody who found me on LinkedIn. I only market on LinkedIn. I decided 3 years ago I'm going to go deep on one platform. I think LinkedIn is it. So he found my 12 TEDx talks on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Realized there's nobody else who's got that kind of, that many. And he began to do some research to see, well, is there anybody teaching an online comprehensive course on TEDx, like from application to how do you leverage it to get more speaking engagements or whatever? There is no other comprehensive,
Mhm.
super nuts. So he approached me and said, look, we build these courses and market them.
Mhm.
Normally we charge $4,000 or $5,000 upfront and then 30% on each sale, but you have the market to yourself.
Mhm.
You have 12 TEDx talks, so we'll waive the 4 or 5 grand and we'll just take 20% if you're willing to work with us to put a course together. So we we launched it I guess 2 weeks ago on a Saturday in a soft opening. You want to make sure you work all the bugs out.
Yeah.
We had about 15 people who'd signed up on a wait list and they got in and we're working through it with them. Did you find anything wrong? Did everything work?
Yeah.
And his idea was, I wish I'd thought of it, not just an online course, but let's create a speaker community of like-minded people who are all working toward the same goal. So there's a platform called Clear, and it's called, I wrote this, it's called the College of Speaking Knowledge.
Oh,
And we have 2 live coaching calls with me a week. One is on Sunday, ask me anything, and one is usually the middle of the week on Wednesday, where I bring in an expert, somebody who can talk to the speakers about the speaking business, educate them on some element of the speaking business. So
mhm.
2 live coaching calls every week. There's a button on there for study buddy if you want somebody to study with. There's a group discussion like a Facebook group that they can put questions in the group discussion. Other students can weigh in. I can weigh in. They can DM me. They can DM the other students. So, and we have a speaker saloon because any good college has a good bar nearby. So we go to the speaker saloon to celebrate everybody's wins. And if you're working on a TEDx and you land it and you need some place to practice it before you do it on stage, we'll set up a live event and invite all the students and you can perform it for all of us and we'll give you feedback. So we created an online course and a community of like-minded people because, an online course is kind of lonely. You're at home, you're by yourself, it's self-paced. But this way, you're interacting with the other students frequently.
That's brilliant. So I'm curious for me, but also some of the people listening, maybe, what platform are you using that has the study buddy functionality and the speaker saloon and all that?
Clear, C-L-E-A-R, clear.com.
That is the platform?
That's the platform. Yep.
Oh, okay. Is it one you created or it's an application that you've got your program on?
It's one that existed pre-existing, and the marketing company, we experimented with a couple, and that seemed to have the most functionality. And that oftentimes with a course, you have to go to Facebook to be in the group, and you go someplace else for,
Yeah.
and this has it all
In-
inside the College of Speaking and Knowledge, all there on the, the events, the resources, we archive all the lives. So it's all in one place.
Okay. So congrats on getting that out there. Boy, there is no grass growing over under your feet because I talked to you what 3-4 weeks ago, and we
Yeah,
didn't
that's right.
it wasn't done yet. It wasn't out there. So where do people go to find that though? If they want to connect on that, do they go to LinkedIn or do they go to Clear?
They would just email me,
Okay. Email you at.
Frank King Speaker at Gmail.
Okay.
And Frank King, both K's in Frank and King, Frank King Speaker at gmail.com.
Okay.
And what I would do is send them a landing page. It'll describe the program, it's a checkout page.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. So let's talk about those TEDx's briefly, because that's a big part of you and your world, and your claim to fame is that you have the most TEDx talks of anyone in the world,
Yep.
by quite a significant factor over most. Most are lucky to get one. So yes, I want to know how you did it, but what was the thing that kept you motivated to keep doing more and more and more? What was the thing that motivated you? Because again, on this podcast, I want people to think about what motivates you to actually go do the thing that you need to do. So what was it that motivated you?
Well, the first one, so people would take me seriously. And
Yeah.
I must give my wife credit. She said, do a TEDx. And I said, what's a TEDx? And just by chance, I got an email that week from a TEDx in British Columbia, in
Yeah.
Vancouver. And they weren't inviting me to do it. They were just inviting me to apply.
Right.
And so I applied and I got it. And then I guess it was good enough that two other TEDx events saw it, both contacted me, both said the same thing. Do you have any other mental health topics? Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I did two more, and that kicked off my addiction to the TEDx. Now, the fourth one,
Yeah.
and this I believe is key to getting a TEDx. They get 200 or 300 applications for every one of those. TEDx Seattle reportedly gets 500 applications.
Wow.
So I believe the first hurdle is being creative as possible with a hook. Because if I'm on the committee and I got a couple hundred applications to go through, I'm not looking for the first reason to give you an audition. I'm looking for the first reason not to and throw you in the no pile so I can go to the next one. So you got to get them to slow the scroll somehow.
Yeah.
So my fourth one, the title and subtitle was so good that they called me, not emailed. They called and said, no, you don't have to audition. You're on. So it was Suicide, the Secret of My Success, which is counterintuitive.
Right.
Dead Man Talking, which is a play on Dead Man Walking, the book and the movie. The fifth one I didn't have to audition for. It was my favorite. It was Mental Health and the Orgasm, Treat Your Depression Single-Handedly. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure that was their reaction.
Yes, I imagine it was as well. So yes.
Yeah. I said to them, I love my iPhone, but it's my second favorite handheld device. Uh,
Yes.
now, I knew, Jeanette, that
Yes.
not every TEDx would find that appealing.
Right.
15 turned it down, but I knew if they did find it appealing, my thought was that they will really like it.
Yeah.
And they did. It's the only one I've ever gotten a standing ovation for.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I closed with a joke that my wife said, don't do it. I said, it's going to kill. And the joke was, I've been talking about masturbation, orgasm. So I said to the audience at the end, do you know why they call an orgasm an orgasm? And they're looking at me like, no. And I said, because nobody could spell standing ovation.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I love that. On that note, let's talk about your comedy career. What got you into comedy in the first place?
Fourth grade, 9 years old.
Yeah.
Told my first joke, ad-libbed it. The kids laughed. The teacher was so hysterical, she excused herself to go to the teacher's lounge. I saw her years later at the Winn-Dixie grocery store.
Yeah.
I said, Mrs. Dark, why did you go to the teacher's lounge? She goes, Frank, I was laughing so hard, I was afraid that you would misinterpret my laughing and you'd be crushed. And so I excused myself to go to the teacher's lounge. And then she said, so what are you doing these days? I said, stand-up comedy. And she said, duh.
Okay, so you were the quintessential class clown.
Yeah, class wit. My mother was very witty.
Okay.
I never jumped off a filing cabinet with a towel tied around my neck like a superhero. I would just mutter things under my breath, and the kids around me would laugh, like the four kids around me, and they'd get in trouble, and I'd skate. Um, my sister, same way, very subtle, very dry.
Yeah.
My sister had a math teacher named Mrs. Rice. Ms. Rice did not like Jane from Hello for whatever reason. Jane's a doll. So she put a problem on the board, and she said, who knows the answer to this? And so my sister raised her hand. And Mrs. Rice systematically called on the four kids around my sister with her hand in the air. So one of the kids, the fourth one, in desperation, said, Ms. Rice, Jane has her hand up. By this time, her hand was down. So Ms. Rice turns to my sister and goes, oh, I'm sorry, Jane. Did you have your hand up? My sister said, yes, Mrs. Rice, but don't worry. It'll never happen again.
Mm.
And my mother would tell you it never did. But that's that sort of, witty,
Yeah.
polite, very polite.
Yeah.
Well, we got in trouble, my sister and I, frequently because my mother taught us we could say anything we wanted to an adult
Right.
as long as we kept a civil tongue in our heads. So
Mhm.
we spoke to adults as, from whatever age. I got suspended once because the chemistry teacher put the answer to a problem on the board. And I said, Miss Templeton, I don't think that's the right answer. And she goes, it is the right answer. And I said, I beg to differ. And for begging to differ, I got suspended. A friend of mine goes, what 16-year-old says I beg to differ? If you're raised by my mother, you said, I beg to differ. Very polite.
Yes, but you still got suspended. So that,
Yeah, you beg to differ somewhere else, young man. You can
yeah.
beg to differ at home.
Oh goodness. So did you go like right into stand-up comedy as a living, or did you do other jobs on the side? How did that evolve?
Well, 12th grade, they had a talent show. I'd
Yeah.
been in drama for 3 years, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, never got a speaking role any of the school plays. And I thought, I see a pattern here. So the talent show, I thought, if I do stand up, I can write, produce, direct, and star in my own little show every night. And nobody had ever done stand up before at the talent show. So I did it and I won. Of course, I beat the accordion player and the folk dancers, but still a win. And I
Yeah.
went home and I said to my mama, I'm going to be a comedian. And she goes, no, son, you're going to college first. I
Mm.
don't care what you do when you get done. You can be a goat herder for all I care, but you're going to be a goat herder with a college degree. So I went to Carolina, UNC Chapel Hill, got a couple of college degrees, and then got hired by an insurance company in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we lived. And they transferred me to San Diego. And that was the beginning of the end of my insurance career because in San Diego, there's a branch of the world famous Comedy Store, the one
Mhm.
that's up on Sunset in LA.
Mhm.
And I went to open mic night April 1st, 1984. And halfway through my 5 minutes, I heard a voice inside my head say, you're home.
Mm.
Second thought was, I'm going to do this for a living. I have no idea how.
Mhm.
Jeanette, I threatened to write a keynote called What Could You Do If You Didn't Know No Better? Because I had no idea how hard it was. Might not have done it if I'd known. So fast forward 18 months, December 84, December 85. I said to my girlfriend, now my wife for 37 years,
Wow.
I'm going on the road to be a stand-up comedian. Do you want to come along for the ride? Figuring she'd go, hell no. She goes, yeah. So we gave up the apartment, our jobs, jumped into my tiny Dodge Colt, and
Mhm.
we were on the road together 2,629 nights in a row, nonstop, no home, just comedy club to comedy club for 7 years and change.
Wow.
And worked with Seinfeld, Rosie, Ellen, Paula Poundstone, Foxworthy, Adam Sandler, Kevin James, Steve Harvey. I mean, anybody opened
Wow.
up for Randy Travis and the Beach Boys, Neil Sedaka, Lou Rawls. So it
Wow.
was an amazing time to be. That 85, 95 was a comedy club boom. So we were able to be on the road pretty much nonstop. Every now and then, we had a couple of days in between, we stop in and see relatives because they would give us a place to stay. So, and then I got a job in radio for about a year and a half because they were hiring comics to be co-hosts for morning shows.
Okay.
And I took a number one morning show and drove it to number 6 in 18 months. And a friend of mine said, "You didn't drive in the ground, you drove that in the middle earth." That is correct. And then I jumped to corporate comedy because I'd always been a clean comic. The dirty little secret about clean comedy is it pays better and you could do it many more places.
Yes.
And people ask me, what's the difference between a club comic and a corporate comic? About $5,000 a night plus travel.
Yeah.
I have comic friends, comedians who are purists in comedy. And they said, "You went corporate, you sold out." I said, "Yes, I'm a prostitute, but I'm a high priced prostitute." So I can live with that.
Yep. So you've reinvented yourself a number of times. You've been doing a lot of the same things for a long time. You've been a comedian for a long time,
Mhm.
but even within that, you zigged and zagged in your career and changed where your focus was. Then a speaker and focusing more on that, even though, of course, in comedy, it's all about standing up and performing and providing value. Um, and zigged and zagged with your speaking a little bit in terms of TEDx, and now on cruise ships doing enrichment, enrichment sessions and so forth. What advice would you give people who are, first of all, who are concerned about the zig and zag, who don't, maybe know where to go or think that they can't reinvent themselves? Because how old did you say you are now? 67?
67.
So you've been reinventing yourself pretty steadily for 67 years, give or take.
Yeah.
What advice would you give people who that might not be their background or their experience?
Well, I think I wouldn't say I was forced into it, but I realized when I started in comedy clubs, I was 23, they were 23. Now in comedy clubs, they're still 23.
Mm.
I'm 67. The only thing we have in common is an unpaid student loan.
Mhm.
So somebody asked me, "Would you do a comedy club?" I said, "Not unless it was part of a plea bargain." Because, I mean, it's no offense to them. They're 23. They can't help it. I just wouldn't. Plus, it doesn't pay very well.
Yeah,
So I did stand up,
yeah.
and then I sensed that the comedy thing was beginning to wind down, and I got lucky and got invited to interview for this radio job.
Hmm.
I thought that's my exit strategy.
Hmm.
So I became a DJ for a year and a half.
Hmm.
And then when the guy, when Phil Zachary, my manager, fired me, we're still friends,
Yeah.
fired me. He said, "Well, go back on the road." And I said, "There is no road."
Mm.
But I had to sit down and think, what am I going to do with this skill set? Realizing that because my comedy was clean and I intended it that way, that I
Hmm.
could jump to the corporate market after dinner, after lunch, the rubber chicken circuit.
Yeah.
And it was a great move because they were used to, up to that point, most conference planners were used to humorists,
Yes.
mildly amusing.
Hmm.
You bring in 7 years of beer bars and pool halls and honky tonks and drunk idiots scream and tell us some jokes we can dance to into a conference. I mean, they were just because it was a laugh every 9 seconds instead of
Yeah.
just funny, humorous stories.
Yeah.
So it was a good time to make the shift.
Yes.
Then the next shift was forced upon us because, the last recession, the bottom dropped out of the speaking business. And it came back. Meeting planner said, "Frank, look, you
Yeah.
got to teach them something." So I guess rather than try to find another job, I realized at that point I was functionally unemployable.
Hmm.
Didn't really have any other skills to speak of. So I had to go searching for a message, content, takeaways, action items, learning objectives. Fortunately, thanks to Judy's book, The Message of You, I found that,
Hmm.
and also taking a personal inventory, two
Hmm.
mental illnesses, near suicide, family's crazy. Well, there's lived experience. As a matter of fact, a psychologist busted me one time after a suicide prevention speech.
Mm-hmm.
He said, Frank, what qualifies you to talk about suicide prevention? You're not a psychologist. You're not a not even a therapist. I said, because I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like.
Mm-hmm.
And in the silence that followed, Jeanette, I said to him, look, I could go to college and learn absolutely everything you know. You will never know what I know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of like I took lemons, made lemonade, and then shared it.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of my philosophy in speaking is take your pain and turn it into passion, your passion into purpose, and your purpose into profit. And most of my speakers have something in their hero or heroine's journey that was very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And they share that in the first third of the talk with the audience, the messes and stresses, as Judy Carter calls them. People want to hear your messes and stresses first,
Yes.
and then the insights and successes,
Yes.
and then teach them something.
Yes.
So I guess I was sort of forced into it, but I think you need to stop and look around and admit what's happening, like comedy club scene collapsing.
Mm-hmm.
I still have friends in their 60s. We're still doing comedy clubs or trying to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a young person's business. Very difficult to get booked after a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not making but 250 a night, but they're selling t-shirts and maybe they make 500 bucks a night. And I've 3 dozen of them have come to me and said, I want to do corporate work. Fine. I said, read Judy's book, come back to me. That's how and not one of them
Yeah.
was willing to put in the work
Yeah.
to make the jump to the corporate market. They
Right.
want the money, but
Yeah.
they don't want to put in the effort to reinvent themselves to do that. I mean, a number have
Yes.
invented themselves. I mean, they didn't come to me. They just did it naturally. They reinvented themselves
Right.
naturally. But yeah, there 3 dozen have come to me, and not one of them has
Yeah.
actually, followed through. It's a shame because they could have gotten my advice back then for nothing.
Mm. Now
Now
they
it's
need to pay very well for it.
Yeah,
Uh,
now it's 10 grand.
yeah.
So you
Exactly.
should have taken my advice when I was giving it away.
Yeah, exactly. Well, some really important teaching points in there, and then I want to kind of wrap up with how people can reach you. The a couple of things you said. So sometimes necessity is the mother of reinvention,
Mhm.
but a lot of times also what I hear is that you really just took stock of what is going on. You got present with kind of the reality of the situation, a market, your wherewithal, where you were at personally, and then decided, okay, well, what's the gap and how do I figure out how to fill that gap?
Yep.
And you went and got the tools and resources you needed to be able to do the work to bridge the gap. So you didn't just sit around and go, well, there's a gap, and I think I'll just keep beating my head against the wall that I've been beating my head against for a long time. You went, how do I bridge this gap? And you got the tools, whether it's a book or a coach or a person to help you with that, and stepped into that new expression of your purpose and passion. I loved your phrase of take your pain, turn it in passion, passion into purpose, or the other way around, and that into profit. I think that's
Yep.
awesome. It's one of the things we overlap on. And then put action behind it. So the real key there is, grab yourself by the ovaries and go for it, because you cannot make a change if you don't actually take the action. So like you said, so many people want to, but they don't actually take the action. That's
And
key.
something I do on airplanes,
Mm-hmm.
I'm flying a long flight and I've got a companionable seat partner.
Mm-hmm.
I will, I ask leading questions to find out about them. I know my stories. And after about 3 hours, they'll say, well, what do you do? And I say, I'm a comedian. Well, you don't seem that funny. Well, I'm off the clock. Get your checkbook out. We'll yuck it up. But the question I always ask
Mhm.
is if I could wave a magic wand and you could do anything you wanted and make the income you need to survive, what would it be?
Mhm.
And man, they light up.
Yes.
Actually, the first question I ask them is, "What do you do?" They tell
Yeah.
me. I go, "Do you enjoy it?" And here's how you know they don't. If I say, "Do you enjoy it?" and they pause,
Yes.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Well,
Exactly.
I think a lot of people don't. I guess if I had one piece of advice, a lot of people don't ask themselves, Am I living up to my expectations or somebody else's? Am I the person I came here to be? And am I doing what I came here to do? And so it's almost like I give them permission. I flew next to the number one pilot for United Airlines. He was going down to Dallas. He was the two airlines emerged. You could only have one chief pilot. There were two guys. He was one of them.
Mhm.
So I said, "Hey man, listen, I hope you get the gig. I hope they select you. But if I could wave a magic wand and you can make the same money doing anything else, what would you do?" He said, "I'd be a sous chef."
Hmm. And now for something completely different.
Yeah, did it in college, loved every minute of it. A woman emailed me a year later.
Yeah.
She set up at a convention, she set up the exhibit hall booth. And I said, "Do you like it?"
Yeah.
And yeah. And I said, did you have to make enough money that you could survive if you made the switch and then, um, you know, and a year later, I got an email from him. He said, "Frank, you probably don't remember me, but we sat next to each other. I set up exhibit hall booths at conferences, and you asked me what would I do if I could do anything. She goes, "I'm doing it." I can't even remember what it was, but I think people just don't ask themselves that. You get on a treadmill, make
Yeah.
good money. I mean, there's a chance you're gonna take if you
Yes.
get off. It's like if you pick a lane. The one thing I remember from my economics classes at Carolina was something called economic cost. If you pick one lane, you're not picking the other. So you're eliminating potential income from the other lanes.
Hmm.
And I understand the fear there, but I believe it's short-term loss, long-term gain.
Hmm.
My goal for speakers is when they come looking for somebody who speaks on this topic, they don't just want anybody, they want you. So
Yeah.
you're no longer a commodity in the speaking business. You are the expert or thought leader. It's happened a few times to me.
Hmm.
Um, I like to have it happen more. It's a long game,
Yeah.
but you're not going to get there if you're speaking on, I can speak on anything to anybody. Well, you're not going to speak to anybody on anything.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Or you'll be speaking to networking groups with 12 people in the room.
Yeah.
So yeah, been there, done that, have the t-shirts. So Frank, how can people connect with you and find out more about you? Let's say they want to connect with you, because this is also a very smart takeaway, everybody. Be that thing to those people. Don't have everything on all of your websites, don't have 12 things there. So if they want to connect with you about your TEDx coaching, where do they go?
Well, Jeanette, I was trying to figure out a URL for the Make Money Speaking and the TEDx coaching.
Yes.
And my wife, bless her heart, doesn't spend a lot of time on the internet besides taking Spanish classes. She goes, "Well, how about make money? How about how to make money speaking.com?" And I'm thinking in 2024, what are the odds
Yeah.
that's available? So I typed it in, how to make money speaking.com. Oh dear God. It's available. So I bought it. That's
Yeah.
how you get in touch with me for either the TEDx or the Make Money Speaking. And then mentalhealthcomedian.com. Mentalhealthcomedian.com is the mental health. And you'll notice when you go to those sites that on the mental health site, it's nothing but are you looking for a suicide prevention speaker and trainer? That's it. No mention of coaching or TEDx and on the Make Money Speaking site, it's just about make money speaking. You sense a theme here. The
So how to make money speaking.com, right?
Yep.
All right. And the mentalhealthcomedian.com. So there's been so many things that you shared, Frank, that I hope people really heard, because you went through some of them pretty quick, but they're very smart in terms of how you've done some of the things you've done. Not just picking a lane and a niche, but and I hope those of you who that makes you a little squirrely hear that within that there is so much variety and so much impact and so much that he gets to engage with people on in different ways, whether it's on a cruise ship or in a corporate venue or one-to-one. There's so many ways that he makes a difference. Like you're not here, that Frank makes a difference. Um, but also there's really some great nuggets in there around how to get yourself focused, motivated, moving towards something that's meaningful to you. And I loved your 3 questions. Say them again, the 3 questions that you should ask yourself, because I think
Yeah.
those are really great.
Yeah, and it's from a client of mine who did a TEDx on individuation, which is sort of like midlife crisis. They are his call to action. He says, one, Are you living up to your expectations or someone else's? And he was living up to his mom's before he changed.
Mhm.
Number two, are you the person you came here to be? And number three, are you doing what you came here to do?
Mhm.
Again, I don't think people they get sort of on that treadmill, and checks income, good job, benefits, and they sort of and next thing you know, you're retiring.
Mhm.
I've got friends who I started with in comedy who could have easily made a career.
Mhm.
They just were not brave enough to make the jump, and it's kind of a last person standing business. There are 30 of the open micers, 30 plus open micers at the comedy store. And I think three of us have made a living over time. And I think I'm the only one still making a living out of the 30. And I
Yeah.
wasn't the funniest, Jeanette,
Yeah.
by far, but I was willing to put in the effort to pay my dues and go for it.
And pivot and reinvent and adjust as you
Yep.
needed to stay relevant, to stay doing what you love. Because the other thread that I hear here is, yes, you may be doing some of the things you don't necessarily like in business or whatever, but it's all within your passion and area of expertise. So it fills your cup, the work that you do.
Yes, and the thing about the TEDx speakers and speakers in general, definitely TEDx speakers, they want to make a difference because that's what TED wants. They want you to improve the lives of people who hear you speak.
Yeah.
Most speakers want to make a difference. So I'm working with these passionate people. I'm just helping them focus and market
Yeah.
and ramp up the speaking career so that I'm helping them make the changes in the world they want to see.
Yes. Awesome. And on that note, so if you are one of those people who wants to get your message out there and or make a difference, being the person that you're here to be, doing what you're here to do, then you can reach out to Frank, find out his various services and so forth that he can help you with. If you're not clear what that is yet, then reach out to me and I will help you figure out what your why is, why you do what you do. Once you got your purpose clarified and a bit of clarity about your direction, then you can go talk to Frank. Yes.
Here's how a friend of mine puts it. When you figure out what you want to do,
Mhm.
and let's see, you figure out what you want to do, um, then figure out your why.
Mhm.
And once you figured out what you want to do and your why, the how will come.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, and you know, borrowing the phrase from my friend of the mind, Simon Sinek, it's important to start with why. If we don't have that purpose, especially older in life, that takes literally 8 years off your life. Well, no, let me rephrase that. If you're lonely, it takes 8 years off your life. If you have purpose that pulls you forward or meaning in your life, it adds 7 qualitative years to your life. You're happier, you're healthier, you're more functional. So finding that purpose is not just a nice to have. It's not about navel gazing and so forth. It's about really saving your life and being who you're here to be going forward. So important work. So thank you so much for being here, Frank. But more importantly, thank you for being a really great example of it's never too late to say, yes, I want to do this. Thank you for being a great example of I'm just going to continue to grow and give and make a difference. And
Mhm.
thank you for being a great leverager of other people's messages. I think that's important work. You help so many people put their meaning out into the world as well. And I also really want to thank you for being a very honest mental health advocate. Obviously, in our world, there's not enough conversations about that. There's not enough focus on it. And the more people like you who can say, here's what is, and here's how we can support people that way, the better for everyone. So
Yep.
thank you for all of the work that you do.
My pleasure.
All right, everybody, take action on this. I hope you got some inspiration and some nuggets. If you didn't, go listen to this again because there was lots there for you. And take action. Reach out to me. Reach out to Frank. Get going. Get yourself in action. This is not about theory. This is about you inventing who you are in the next the third act or three. Someone said to me today, I'm in act three of my, or no, the third quarter of my life. That's what it is. The third quarter of my life. I was like, okay, by whatever measurement that you are, wherever you are in your life, it's time for you to figure out what is your message, what matters to you, and what's the difference that you want to be in the world.
Yep.
Thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your week. And thanks for being here, Frank.
You betcha.
Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.